February 7, 1996. A British Airways Concorde crosses the Atlantic in 2 hours, 52 minutes, and 59 seconds, the fastest commercial flight ever recorded. Then the Concorde stopped flying. Today, your Boeing 737 cruises at the exact same speed as the first Boeing 707 from 1958. Write in the comments, why do you think we fly slower today than decades ago? You'll discover why one number, 1 pound per square foot, killed an entire industry, why airlines chose slower planes even when faster ones existed. The paradox engineers can't solve. The faster you fly, the more you lose. Why military pilots can break the sound barrier, but you never will again. You think speed is always better. Airlines disagree, and physics is on their side. The brutal math, supersonic travel consumes 5 to 7 times as much fuel as subsonic flight. The Concorde could only allocate 6% of its total weight for passengers and cargo. A Boeing 747 carries 20%. The Concorde's 4 engines burn nearly 7,000 gallons of jet fuel per hour. Every minute in the air, hemorrhaging money. Military jets flew supersonic for short bursts. No aircraft had spent more than 1 hour at Mach 2 before the mid-1960s. But a commercial airliner needed to maintain supersonic speeds for hours while keeping passengers comfortable, serving meals, maintaining cabin pressure. Military jets had an expected lifetime of several thousand flight hours. Commercial jets needed 30,000 hours to be practical. They needed to turn a profit. They never did. In 1996, a New York to London ticket cost $7,574, $12,460 in today's money. Flights were often only half full. The plane was flying. The seats were empty. The airline was losing money on every flight. What if the real problem wasn't the plane? It was the sound. Federal regulations banned civil aircraft from flying faster than sound over the United States. The prohibition was codified in 1973 and remains in effect today. The reason? Sonic booms caused explosive noise across wide swaths of ground. Property damage complaints, windows cracking, intense public backlash during testing in the 1960s when the Air Force conducted supersonic flights over Oklahoma City. Thousands of complaints flooded in. Some residents filed lawsuits. The physics of pain. Humans find sonic boom overpressures above 1 pound per square foot objectionable. Overpressures of 1 to 2 pounds at the surface are typical of supersonic aircraft flying at cruise altitudes of 30,000 to 50,000 feet, 1 pound per square foot. That's the number that ended supersonic passenger flight over land. The Concorde's only 2 regular routes were transatlantic flights, principally over water, New York to London, New York to Paris. No sonic boom reached American soil because the Concorde never flew supersonic over it. The plane would accelerate to supersonic speeds only after reaching international waters. Over the heartland of America, over the suburbs of New Jersey, the fastest commercial aircraft ever built had to fly subsonic, slower than a regular 747. July 25, 2000. During a Concorde takeoff from Paris, debris from a burst tire struck the fuel tank. The tank ruptured. Fire engulfed the aircraft. 113 people died. The whole fleet was grounded. Customer trust plummeted. After September 11, 2001, when air travel collapsed globally, supersonic passenger service ended permanently in 2003. But here's what no one tells you about why it really died. It was already dying long before that crash. The Concorde was only just barely possible. Had its range been even 2% less, it couldn't have flown across the Atlantic without refueling. 2%, the margin between revolutionary and worthless. The Concorde was twice as expensive to buy and twice as expensive to operate as a 747, an aircraft with around 1/4 the passenger capacity. Nearly every airline canceled its orders. The Concordes were only adopted by the state airlines of Britain and France, British Airways and Air France. Sold at a steep discount to production cost, essentially subsidized by taxpayers, hundreds were initially ordered by airlines worldwide. Only 14 Concorde commercial airliners ever flew. 14. During supersonic flight, frictional heat caused the fuselage nose temperature to rise to 127 degrees Celsius. Passengers could feel the heat inside on the window casings, the metal skin expanding, stretching as it accelerated. The Concorde maintained sustained supersonic cruising speeds of Mach 2.04, 1,354 miles per hour. At an altitude of 60,000 feet, twice as high as regular airliners, passengers could see the curvature of the Earth through the windows. The sky above turned deep purple, almost black. Cost per passenger mile was more than double that of a Boeing 747. More than double. Imagine knowing you're piloting the fastest commercial aircraft ever built, and watching it die because no one can afford to keep it flying. The pilots who flew the final flights knew they were closing a chapter that would never reopen. They could outrun the sun, flying west fast enough that sunset never came. And they knew it was ending. Why military jets can fly fast. Afterburners dump raw fuel into the exhaust flame, pushing aircraft forward even faster. Fuel consumption goes through the roof. Afterburners can give 50% more thrust compared to not using them. 50%. But military missions are measured in hours, not cross-continental flights. Strategic necessity, cost is secondary. A fighter jet doesn't need to turn a profit, it needs to win. Why passenger jets cannot? The main reason commercial flights aren't faster is fuel efficiency. The faster a plane flies, the more fuel it burns. And the relationship isn't linear, it's exponential. Above a certain speed, every additional mile per hour costs dramatically more fuel. For economic and environmental reasons, progress has stalled. Modern airliners fly at roughly the same speed as Boeing's first jet airliner, the 707, introduced in 1958. Same speed. 65 years later. The design paradox, a wing designed for efficient performance supersonically, is typically very poor at providing lift at slow speeds during takeoff and landing. Supersonic wings are thinner, more swept back, shaped like deltas or arrows. Standard wings are thicker, wider, designed to grab air and generate lift at low speeds. You can't optimize for both. Physics won't let you. You have to choose. The Concorde had a droop nose which helped pilots see during takeoff and landing. Because of the aircraft's steep angle during landing, nose high, tail low, pilots couldn't see the runway ahead, so engineers devised a way for the nose to mechanically pivot down, lowering the cockpit and giving pilots visibility. A hinged snout, lowered for visibility, raised for speed, locked in place during supersonic flight. Imagine designing a car that's brilliant at 200 miles per hour but can barely turn into your driveway. That's every supersonic aircraft ever built. Two opposing realities. Boom Supersonic, a company founded in 2014, plans to build an airliner called Overture that can fly at Mach 1.7. The company claims a trip from New York to London could take 3.5 hours instead of 7. Boom's Overture expects to cruise at speeds up to 50% faster than today's jets. With no audible boom for communities below, they call it boomless flight. Flight profiles designed to minimize sonic boom intensity, keeping overpressure below that 1 pound per square foot threshold. But prohibitively high costs were among the reasons both the US and Soviet Union developed but abandoned their quest for civilian supersonic flight. The Soviets built the Tupolev Tu-144, which flew even before the Concorde. It was faster, cheaper to build, and a complete commercial failure, retired after only a few years of passenger service. The only successful endeavor, if you can call it successful, was Concorde, funded by the British and French governments, operating at a loss for most of its service life. By the late 1990s, it cost $6,000 to fly one way on the Concorde, a huge premium over subsonic business class. The Concorde was retired by British Airways and Air France because they had trouble getting enough passengers to pay the premium consistently. Airlines are driven by profits, not by how fast they can fly, and flying fast is expensive. The prohibition on supersonic flight over land has been in place since 1973 and remains one of the most consequential regulations in aviation. But new legislation introduced in recent years would require the FAA to allow civil aircraft to fly faster than Mach 1 over land, provided no sonic boom reaches the ground. Provided. That's the engineering challenge no one has definitively solved at commercial scale. Write in the comments what you think, because even engineers can't agree. Is Boom Supersonic building the future, or repeating Concorde's mistake with better marketing? There is only one photograph showing the Concorde during supersonic flight taken from a military jet that intercepted it, because no other civilian aircraft, not even most fighter jets, could match her speed long enough to photograph her. The Concorde remains the only commercial supersonic passenger aircraft to have traveled at more than twice the speed of sound in regular service. It was a technological accomplishment, but not a commercial success. In 2003, all Concorde aircraft were permanently taken out of service. Military jets fly 3 times faster because they don't need to be profitable. Passenger planes fly slower because you need to arrive and afford the ticket. We chose cheap over fast, quiet over quick, economy over speed. Every airline made the same calculation. Would you rather fly in 3 hours and pay $12,000 or fly in 7 hours and pay $800? The market answered. The Concorde died. Was it the right choice? Or did we lose something we'll never get back? Choose what surprised you most. That supersonic flight uses 7 times more fuel, that Concorde tickets cost $12,000 in today's money, or that only 14 Concordes ever flew commercially. Write it in the comments.